which basically there's different things in the world. Some things are genuinely fragile, like a china teacup, that if you drop it, it breaks. Other things are anti-fragile, which means that they become less fragile by exposure to potentially adverse or difficult experiences. And human beings and human children, I think, should be considered in the category of being anti-fragile, which means they develop and can develop resilience by being exposed, not just thrown into horrendous environments, but being exposed to situations that are potentially challenging, that will bring up feelings, including fear. And as a result of those experiences, they can develop a kind of resilience. The other factor that I really want to mention in terms of resilience is about congruence between parents and children. So for my charity, A Part of Me, we were researching PTSD in war and children for a new program we're developing. And I interviewed an amazing woman called Rana, who grew up in Baghdad in the 1980s during the Iraq-Iran war. And she described to me that she was very aware, age 10, that there was a war going on and that there was bombs being dropped and that life was basically very unsafe. And but she said the thing that she remembered that she believes really led to her struggling more than anything else was the lack of congruence with her parents. So her parents would basically come home and tell her everything's completely fine. Like, yeah, don't worry, it's all completely fine and we're going to be fine, da da da. Whereas she could see in their faces, basically a daily state of fear or even terror. And she described to me how that lack of congruence really left her feeling quite alone. And she then developed all sorts of, adaptive, not so healthy behaviors to cope with that feeling of being alone. And Peter Fonagy, who's like a great British psychotherapist and researcher into trauma, he's done a lot of studies into the connection between loneliness and trauma. And I love one of his lines is basically something like adversity only becomes a trauma when it's compounded by a sense that one's mind is alone.
Absolutely, and that's influenced Peter Levine as well. He was saying it's actually in the absence of the compassionate other that trauma really, really lands. Whereas we can actually,
Exactly.
through that emotional intelligence and that bodily intelligence we were just discussing, we have all the tools to process even quite horrific things, but not in isolation.
Not in isolation. That's exactly it. So coming back to the idea of resilience is that children can survive the most horrific situations, and they have done. Like for thousands of years, children have survived these situations, and some have even thrived. But one of the key differences is the fact that they have found a compassionate other, whether it's a parent or somebody else, who's helped them to feel less alone.